One second, I'm just starting to log in from the YouTube also. People on the YouTube can also see it now. Okay, so let's start the prayer and then we can continue. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. So, welcome once again, Sairam, and praying for healthy and safe time for all of you. So, today again, we have selected this topic of practical spirituality, and I thought we will look at this session in discussing certain elements of what do we actually mean and think from the perspective of what is practical spirituality. Last time we discussed about concepts like uh, sealing sorry, CIA, constant integrated awareness, and other forms. So today we will look at practical spirituality from the basis of why do we need to think about practicality and a spiritual concept into practicality. Now, I come to this thought because there is always a question in the minds that we need spiritual life and we have to do our normal life to work, to study, to make money, to have family, to take care of responsibilities. And in all that, there is always a conflict that saw me both aspects. I say life and we talk about living, and then we say the spiritual lifestyle, and this is a more materialistic lifestyle. I need to go to bhajans, I need to go to set satsangs, but I also need to go to movies, I need to go to parties, I have to do my business. So, how do you understand the union, the mergence of these two concepts? And that is where I thought we'll start with just of with giving little attention to this concept of life and living. Now, what do we understand by life? I'm trying to consciously segregate these two aspects, life and living. What do we understand by life? When we look at life, we say, okay, breathing is life, correct? Listening is life, seeing is life, my bodily growth is life. I'm alive, right? That's how we feel that we are alive because all this is happening to me. And for that, you train your children from the childhood, you feed them. But have you paused to think that is this life sweat, sleep, walk? Nothing. It happens at a respective time. Maybe an animal's child may just pop out and start walking in few minutes, and a human child takes a couple of years to walk. But that is a natural process. So when you look at life and when you break life into that segment to understand, we see that life is really happening. We do nothing to make it happen. So between life and living, we understand that there is nothing much you can do with life. Now, why it has been given to us is a separate question. We'll look at it afterwards again. But the basic point is life happens. You got it. You have been given. Now, the second part is living. We think, yes, man, I have to work. I have to go to school to learn, educate my family. Then I have to find somebody to be a spouse. Our attention totally moves towards living. And we move towards living in such a manner that most of the time we lose focus is that it is forcing us to sit and face your life, face yourself. Unfortunately, in this, we treat as taken for granted. It is happening. I don't do anything for it. But living, I spend most of my time. Whereas when you decide your purpose, you don't decide the purpose of living, which is naturally happening. So in the equation, you understand that actually what we are working is not required. Because if you are working for life, that is happening naturally. And if you are working for living, just because you have to engage, then why do you give it 100% attention and neglect your life? So it has to be given a due importance so that there is a balance. I'm inspired to tell you a small little story about it. I think I've shared it before, but it's worth reminding. This happened in a session with our master. We were all sitting there, and somebody raised this point to Bhagwan, and he said, Bhagwan, when we sit with such persona, the heart has to open to receive also. So the boy expressed his frustration or tiredness and saying, Master, life has become very tough. Me and my wife both have to work hard. We have to work hard to meet our needs. So master looked at him very smiling, says, why? Why you have to work so hard? So he said, Bhagwan, we have to pay mortgage, send our children to school. There is so much bills have to be paid. He said, that is not your need. That is your greed. You both working can never fulfill your greed. But if you are asking to fulfill your need, one person working is enough. But of course, it was a very philosophical answer for us. We said, who can argue with the master at that time? So we paused, and he understood that we are not totally satisfied. And he looked a little bit outside for a few seconds, and then he turned and he asked, hey, this outside, you see this whites for them? Now, there was a pause. There was a silence, a deafening one to understand, like, where was he going and what was he trying to tell us? And he very beautifully asked, who provides for those small insects? And those insects for you are very insignificant, but somebody is taking care of them. And he smilingly said, my dear children, they are one of the very insignificant creations, and I look after them too. You, after all, are my most precious creation. Do you think I won't look after you? And that puts you in a thought to understand that what is then we are supposed to do. Life is already taken into account. Living needs to be worked at, yes, because we have to engage ourselves. But chase is not required and not desired. Then the question comes, like, hello, then what are we supposed to spend our time on? And that is the point which is important to understand when we think about practical spirituality. The whole thing we are doing in our life is only for one purpose: to realize the purpose of our life, to realize who we are. Who am I? And this constant remembrance we discussed in CIA, the constant integrated awareness session, we looked at it a little bit more detailed. So the whole concept of working, that's why our master used to give you a very nice tips. He said, even if you're driving, chant the name. Think of me. If you're cooking, think of me. So nothing goes without him. So when you are engaging yourself continuously in that process, then what happens is, then primarily you are now focusing your living towards the purpose of your life. And that is the mergence between life and living. And that is how we connect those two. And once we learn to connect like that, then in 24 hours, anything we are doing it for the joy of ours as an offering. Then there is nothing which can not be called as spiritual. Then everything becomes beautiful, whether I'm cooking, cleaning, dancing, jumping, driving, working, going to office, sleeping. It's a beautiful journey. So that becomes a constant integrated awareness. And that is exactly what is a connect between life and living. Now I'll tell you another story. Now, I don't know how many of you have experienced nadis. I can't see your hands here, but anyways, those who are on this, there are in India, there are places where they have all the lives of every being born written on the leaves, the leaflets, and the leaves are roughly around 7 to 10,000 years back. It was dictated and written by our great rishi. Knowledge of you know calculating the stars, calculating everything, and studying the nuances of karma and cause and effect of each action, and then write down the life of each soul. The nadis are written in such a beautiful and scientific manner that till today they will tell you exactly what you have done, where you arrived. From today onwards, they will give you options also, that if you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, this is going to happen. And after 1 year, if you come back to read again, then you realize they'll tell you exactly up to that date. That means they would have already predicted that if you are here at this point, that means in the past you have taken that choice. So can you imagine, some 15,000 years back, somebody wrote each and everybody's life? So if you know that I am destined to be born with this name, I'm destined to be born in a family, I'm going to have so and so call my wife, I'm going to have so and so as my children, and I'm going to give name. How stupid and how foolish we sound when we say, you know what, I did MBA, I really worked hard to acquire the degree, then I chased that girl and I proposed her, then we both planned our children and we fought to get names. My parent wanted some name, my friend wanted some name, but we decided to give this name to my child. And then you come to know that some 10,000 years back, somebody had already written that you are going to be born in such and such time, and you will have so and so as a husband, wife, and children. Now, how dumb we sound at that time. That what was I doing then? That my false acknowledgement that I am the doer, I have done this MBA, I worked hard to get this money, made my car, houses, then I got married, had children. It sounds so childish, because then you realize the truth was something else. That means even the living part, what we are talking, is also being controlled. I hope I'm taking you through this journey to understand that when we look at life and living, then we understand that in fact everything is controlled. But then the question comes, is there anything called personal will, self effort? If I tell this to children, they'll say, okay mom, I will not work now, if I'm destined to pass, I'll pass. So people will saying this is a very a formula for laziness. So what is the difference now? Now, how do we understand where is this concept of self-effort and where is the concept of supreme will which plays into this? Now, this is the next step which we need to focus on. Now, as we have seen, it appears through these examples which I have given you so far that life is already determined. Your birth, then your growth is natural. We do nothing to stop even a second of our life. And what has gone, we can't pull it back. Am I right? And in the living aspect, we just realized that even living was so far predicted, but it had given us an option to choose. Now, if everything is destined, then how do I think about my personal will? Is there anything called my personal will? Now, the beauty of this is yes, there is a will also. Now, in this creation, in this equation of the whole cosmos, that element is also put in. That, okay, to make this game of life interesting, the nature has given us this so called free will. Now, free will is certainly under the purview of the supreme consciousness will, no doubt about it. But there is an element of free will to play with. Now, this is a game. Either we understand the free will is given to us so that we realize that our free will is nothing but an expression of the supreme will. So the choice is given to us for us to realize and accept that there is a supreme will and I am only a reflection of that. And hence, my effort is supposed to be finding a sync, finding an alignment with that supreme will. And for that, I need to work, period. Now, for that, then we have been given so many rules and regulations, do's and don'ts of life, so that when we follow those things, the discipline of life, what in our traditional language we say dharmic living, the dharmic style of life, when we start using those templates to live, we are supposed to find an alignment with the cosmic consciousness. And then we start getting glimpses, what we call my gut feeling said so. I had this hunch. Now, there are some things which you will experience, but you won't be able to put logical explanation to it as to why are you feeling like that. And that is a time, if you encourage those thoughts, encourage those intuitive messages, and that will become larger and larger, gain more strength. And that is an indication that we are getting more and more aligned with the cosmic awareness. See, that is the whole thing. So slowly, slowly, when we start encouraging our so-called gut feeling, intuitiveness, they will start expanding. And then suddenly everything will become a very, very inspired way of living in which everything is intuitive. The logical sense will disappear because logic is from mind and it plays tricks on us. So as long as we are thinking logical, we are in the mind zone, and which is okay. For most of us, that is also okay. That requires, but that is required so that we can keep moving to the finer and finer sense of discrimination, so that one day our discrimination merges with intuitive living. So, what is this self will? Now, there is a very beautiful story, another, which will explain to us and give you a very beautiful, a powerful message about, individual will and the supreme will. One sitting with the master again, one boy raised this question to Bhagwan. He said, same thing he asked, said, Master, you say nothing moves without the will of God. Without your will, not even a leaf can move. That is what you have proclaimed. But here, I'm doing what I will. I can move my hand. I can move my head. See, I'm able to do it. I don't need your will. So please explain to me, what do you really mean by saying that nothing can move without your will? Here I am moving without your will. That was a question asked. I don't know how many of you have ever thought in that terms. But see, the challenge of our life is this only, that we don't allow ourselves to think boldly. We don't allow ourselves to get into that mode of self inquiry that we can genuinely pose questions even to master. And we must learn to ask. The only thing required is how question can be asked, but it should be first thought, dwelled, introspected, and then humbly presented. So as long as you are not humble about your presentation, then that could be an issue for you. But you can ask. So this question was asked to Bhagwan, and he, Master, tell me, what do you really mean by saying nothing can move without my will when I can move my hand? Looked at him and he said, my child, you can move because my will is in alignment with your will. The boy didn't follow, was seemingly not satisfied with the answer. So after a few seconds pause, the master again looked at him and he said, okay, now see, you willed to move hand, and I will to let you will to move hand. So you moved. Now I hold my will that you cannot move your hand. Now you use your will and move your hand. The boy was sitting like this in front of him. And the moment Swami Baba's Bhagwan said that I move my will, now you move, he was frozen. He lost all his energy even to move his finger. It was so frustrating that he could not even open his mouth. And we could see that his face was turning different, and he was the fear on his face was visible. And to such an extent that he even could not hold himself straight, and he kind of dropped front towards Bhagwan. And as he dropped, the master caught him and said, I will now move. And his whole hand started moving back again. He said, yes, your will can only work when I will. So when my will, so that we can explore, discover, inquire, expand. But unfortunately, we use this free will in our narrow, fulfilling our desires rather than dreams. So the self will which is given to us, that determines how we are going to proceed further. And then we get into the cause and effect of our life, which is our karma. But ultimately, we have to realize that the main string holder, the main puppeteer is the master sitting somewhere who can easily pull us and bring us back. So the question again comes, the same thing which I was asking you here, self-effort and supreme will. So yes, there is self-effort and there is supreme will, no doubt about it. The self-effort is given for us to realize our supreme will. The self-effort is given to us so that we can align ourselves with the supreme will. Now you may wonder again as to, is there a way out? What I understand in my limited studies is that all this happens because of one basic cause, and that cause is our feeling of body consciousness, our duality. See, the more and more we feel, I am separate, he is separate. More and more I attach myself to my body. the whole thing is there. Then my free towards living, the quest for living, struggle, that becomes alive, that becomes more and more prominent. But the more I move towards less of body consciousness, towards life without consciousness, there I find more liberation. See, you can analyze yourself. Whenever we are extremely happy, do you feel connected to your body more or less? Think about it. Whenever you are too happy, you will experience genuine liberated feeling. You will feel like giving donations. You will be very generous in your mood. You won't, you're disturbed in your mind, and the car is going very slow, bumper to bumper kind of driving. And in that, you find somebody trying to, nose inside. I'm sure all of us must have experienced this. Somebody trying to get in. What happens to us? We try to move, we honk also sometimes, and we try to move as close to the front car so this person cannot enter. And then we'll give a dirty look also, that how dare you. Not that anything going to get great going to happen. Anyways, we are moving slowly, but this person is trying to get in, button, so we want to stop him. That's all. We are agitated because we are tired, we are frustrated. All that is fine. Take the scenario reverse. When you're in happy mood, what happens to us? When you're happy and somebody tries to take way, you say, "Oh, no problem. Come in, come in." We become generous. We even give way to people and we don't feel bad about it. Somebody tries to overtake, no problem, buddy, have fun. Because I'm happy, I don't want any obstruction in my happiness. See, happiness itself makes you generous, it accommodates, it just gives you all the positivity which you require in life. So if you really think about it, at that moment of happiness, you don't even care if you get scratched or somebody hits you or something happens to you, somebody jumps on you, you just smile at everybody. If you really analyze those moments of your life, you will find that your body consciousness, that your attachment to yourself was least at that point of time. And whenever you are upset and have negative feelings, you will realize that your body consciousness at that level was very high. Your attachment, your possessiveness, all that was very high. How dare he look at me? How dare he talk to me? How dare he said to me? How these statements shows that you have started addressing yourself so much that you have lost track. So the more we get attached to our bodiness, the less we are coming close to ourselves. And that is the key to understand in self effort and supreme will. The more we go towards the supreme will in understanding, then the concept of surrender will automatically flow in, and the concept of happiness will automatically come in, and you will not have the conflict of understanding, is it my will or supreme will. Now there was another very beautiful thought somebody had raised: absolute versus relative. Now I have purposely put it in this tone because this is what I find many people have raised these questions to me, and I'm just sharing you my thoughts. See, we talk about surrender, we talk about doing things for God or anything like that, and we put in our best efforts, and then we say, okay, if it materializes, thank God. If it doesn't materialize, oh, God's will. Correct? And then we have a tendency of philosophizing that it was God's will, so it didn't happen. See, there is a disconnect, because God's will is everything in a way. But then when we discuss this and we realize that whenever we have the body consciousness, we have been given something called an intellect. We have been given that intellect, which is nothing but a spark or a shadow of that supreme consciousness. So that is the reflectiveness we have to use to live and conduct in ourselves, as long as we have this body consciousness, the duality in us. So when we have the duality, we cannot talk about absolute sense. I cannot stand up and say I'm God. When our master also said, know that you're God, repeat it, he didn't say that go and start announcing to the world that I'm God. He said, recite it, meditate on it, and become one. So the moment you say it, you lose it. So these concepts of absolute concepts are our goalposts, like, they are our finales, final steps. We know that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to reach. I'm supposed to reach a lifestyle in which the conscious thought is my thought, that supreme will is my will. When I think this, I think is not happening unless that thought comes into me. See, the very simple English also. We say, I will tell you, think something. Then what do you say? Let me think. What does it mean? That means you are bringing thought from somewhere. So it's like a cloud server. So there are thoughts around you. You just connect and bring in to the server, cloud server. So same thing it is when you start looking from that perspective, you realize that absoluteness is a beautiful thing which is surrounding us. We have to reach there. We have to get one with that. But till we have arrived it, that's our goal. We are living in the relative world. And in the relative terms, I have the body. Hence, I am supposed to conduct according to the dictums and rules and regulations and the dharma of my body. And for that, I need to use my sense of discrimination, the intellect, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. That intellect I need to use to live my life, conduct my life. So when people start philosophizing and saying this is God's will, no. Oh, God must have willed it, so it happened. No, because God has willed everything. That is not the point to look at, because you and I am not in a position to relate to will of God being in the relative term. Can a kindergarten relate to a PhD scholar's learning? He cannot. A person studying science in 8th grade, can he understand the nuances of flying a rocket in the space? He cannot. He can only look from outside and say, yeah, I know what it happens. Or there's a shuttle which goes up. But that is not the science. A scientist has a different level of understanding and knowledge than a 10th grader studying the science, a cosmology. So the point is, in relative world, we live in relative world and we are making statements and judgments into the absolute world. Whereas absolute world cannot be discussed. It has to be meditated on, it has to be imbibed on, and it has to be used as a source of inspiration. So when the relative world comes closer to us, when we become good in relative world, keeping our focus onto the absolute, then slowly the relativism will start reducing and we'll go higher in our understanding towards absolute. And in the same thought, there was a new another question which had come to me was, how do I know that this is my inner voice? The voice of conscience they call it, and it's not my ego playing tricks on me. Sometimes we are too smart. We can justify anything today. I get a thought and I can justify it very beautifully. And then I don't know whether it was a really me talking, my ego talking, or my inner voice talking. How do I differentiate between these two? What I've learned in a simple way is that if you analyze both of these, the basic differentiating factor is what is the end for. If the end of that activity or that effort is for selfish reasons, it is for personal gratification, if it is inspired to benefit me per se, then it is ego. For the betterment of others, for the enhancement and happiness of the larger body of people, then it is inner voice. So that is one of the easiest criteria to differentiate that where do we stand. So when you hear something inside, so how do you understand? But for that also we need to calm ourselves down to hear ourselves. And it is the same thing. You must have heard the story of two wolves inside you. Who wins it? The master said, one you feed. So one is good and one is bad. The only person win is the person in the wolf which you feed. So here also same thing. So the more and more we feed our goodness, it gains strength. And if you keep snubbing it, one day it will not even raise its hood and talk to you. So the difference, what I've learned is very simple in a practical sense. If that result of the act is for my personal gratification, which is not wrong, don't mistake me, but it comes from ego. It may or may not be wrong, that is a different story, but it comes from ego and not from the inner voice of consciousness. So when you really start analyzing things in these manner, then we start looking at life and living in a much more beautiful manner to understand that really both of them are not in our control in an absolute sense, but in a relative sense, both are in my control. And if I play it well, then one day my effort will be in alignment with the absolute consciousness, and then life will become as charming, as beautiful as ever. As somebody said, life is beautiful only if you know how to live it. For people who don't know how to live it, it's a mess. So I think we have 15 more minutes to go, but I thought if you have any questions, I would love to have it now. So anybody, I've got two people here. You can open your mics, or I have got people on the chat. So if anybody has any questions for next 15 minutes, we can discuss them, or any thought, any topic which you feel I can address. So it will be my pleasure. I just try to take a small, thing, sorry, just to understand, just to give you share with you this concept. They are all part of how do we conduct in our life. So any response, any thoughts? Hi, Victor. I can only see two of you here. Rest of them are all hiding. Sharda is here. Rashmi, Suzy, Falguni, thank you for all being here. Victor, example of inner voice and ego. You can speak, Victor. You can switch it on and speak. Okay. Example, anything it can be. Sometimes we are sitting down and wondering, like, should I go out or not? As simple as that. Should I take up this project or not? Should I avoid somebody, and I'm avoiding, suddenly it'll happen. Why am I avoiding? A thought comes to you. But even to hear the inner voice, many times we have to be receptive. And as long as we are not receptive and sensitive towards people, towards the creation around us, I don't think we will be even able to appreciate these sounds. Yesterday, when I was giving, not yesterday, but 2 days back, when I was giving sharing this thought on CIA, we did mention about one thing, that expansion of love is another beautiful measurement. What I mean to say is, see, initially, all of us love ourselves. I'm just presuming, okay? I have a bad habit. I can even prove that you don't love yourself, but that is a different thing. But right now, let me presume that, at least we love ourselves, okay? So we will do nothing which consciously will hurt me, right? I will not do anything which will hurt. So I presume that way. Now that is a very basic living. That becomes an animalistic living style in which I am first feeding myself and then I look at anybody else. And that also not to feed them, but okay, I don't care as long as my stomach is full. So basically, if you look at it, love is the starting factor of the creation. Hence, love is default with everybody. There is nothing in this iota of love in them. So it is presumed that, whether you acknowledge it or not, there is nobody who can say, I don't love myself. Okay. Even if they say they don't know it, but they love themselves. But that becomes a very low level of love. Unfortunately, we have to call the same word every time. So that is like a lowest end of the spectrum, is that kind of love. Then from there you move to an extent in saying, okay, now my stomach is full, let me fill others' stomach. So my wife, my children, my spouses, okay. Now my stomach is full, then I'm going to look at them. Okay, then that is the next level in this. Okay, buddy, I am full, let me feed them. Okay, so at least I've taken care of my family. But that also you can understand it is still very selfish because the focus remains still in me. Then the next step comes, okay, especially mothers would relate better. Even if you are hungry, your child should not be hungry. Your husband should not be hungry. Child, of course, because of love, husband, because you don't want to fight. So it is a okay scenario that, okay, let me feed them, then I feed myself. So that becomes a little higher level in which you take care of your family. And once they are satisfied, they are fed, then you want to feel satisfied yourself. So your first satisfaction comes by seeing others are fed. Now expand it further. When you start thinking that, hey, is everybody in my locality satisfied? If you step out and you see a beggar sitting there, you can't eat inside because you know that fellow is not eaten properly. You have a guard sitting outside the house or on the road. You see him every day in and out, and there's a hot sun. He's standing in the hot sun. So before you have a sip of water, you wonder, did he have it? Before you take the first morsel, something hits in your heart and say, I wonder whether he had his meal today or not. It's possible sometimes he must have rushed home and his family would not have provided for him, or whatever reason. That thought, does it come to you? Does it come to you before you really eat and say, is everybody around me happy? Before you buy a new dress, do you ever get a thought that, do I really need it? I have enough. See, even if you do not act, but the thought shows that your consciousness has elevated further now. Now you are going away from selfishness towards a larger way of looking at life. Now you are able to see life that, yes, I'm able to think about others, my community, my locality, then my family, and then me. Now expand it further. You hear a news and you lose your appetite. Oh my God, so many people in my country, in my state, they're hungry. There is violence. People have got lost humanity, and you start losing your sleep over them. Then you can't even watch killing on the screen, forget eating them. Here we relish. If you don't get in 1 or 2 days your an opportunity to make your body a burial ground, you get disturbed. So how can you practice love and affection if it does not matter to you what you're consuming? So imagine when the consciousness rises higher, naturally that instinct, that desire also goes off. Because you can't even see it on television, forget sitting in front of you and eating. You will not be able to see an animal being cut on the film in the TV because it's going to impact you, because now your love has expanded. Tornado in US tomorrow, yesterday. And because of the tornado's thought, you lose your sleep in India. Hello, Nothing is happening there. No immediate family, but there is a connect, and that connect is the humanness. So, which means now my love quotient factor has increased so much that now everything is impacting me. Hence, I need to make myself more and more secure, more and more stronger to face and understand these things. Imagine then going towards trees, plants, animals, even that sensitivity. Do you know our scriptures, how they teach you how to cut a, how to pluck a flower? There is a format to pluck a flower also. Now you may find it very, laughable, but these are facts of life. In ancient time, before they wake up, it was taught in gurukuls, in our learning sessions. The children would first touch the ground and ask for forgiveness to the Mother Earth, that, oh Mother, unfortunately, I am not capable enough to help it. I am going to put my feet on you to walk. So forgive me. Can you imagine the empathy they taught you from beginning? That you can't help it walking on the earth, but at least express your gratitude and concern that you are walking on it. So first they would touch the ground and say, sorry, because I am forced to walk on you, put my feet on you. Similarly, when they go to drink water from the river, they are supposed to say, fold their hands and accept, acknowledge oneness with the water and say, thank you, I'm consuming you. Now, similarly, when you go to pluck a flower, you're supposed to first say, I'm sorry, I need you. And Bhagwan gave a very beautiful example. He said, if you are plucking the flower for prayer, so you should know how many you want. Then go and ask the tree, and you see plucking will become easier because the tree will release the flower on its own. And that is an experience you all can have. Try going and plucking the flowers, and you see cutting the plucking the flower become easy. And they will remain more fresh for longer time. And especially at night, they are not supposed to be plucked. You know why? Because they are resting. They are not like humans. We are awake till late night, but they sleep with the sunset. So in case you have to cut, you have to pluck them after sunset, you are supposed to first wake them up. See, it became a ritual, then we started laughing at it. So it was like a waking up process. Some people used to clap, some people will do this. All this was a gesture to wake up the plant in due respect and saying, I'm sorry, I have to disturb you. I need you. I have an urgent prayer, or I need something for this. Hence, I am going to pluck you. Can you imagine that kind of education being given to the children from the early times? What kind of children you will have if you start understanding the way we grow? So imagine the empathy which is, given to us from the beginning. It starts instilling in us those profound values wherein you start relating yourself to the cosmos. Then today's problem like climate change and you know deforestation and water scarcity, those problems will not exist. They are existing because we have lost connect. We have lost the understanding of how am I connected to this creation. I'll give you a final statement. According to our scriptures, this creation is going on for over 1,000,000 years. Okay, science will also tell you. So over the 1,000,000 years, this Big Bang happened, and that story, maybe if you guys are interested in, send me a note, and maybe we can even address that, how scriptures explain to us about creation. But the beauty is, over 1,000,000 years, this whole Big Bang thing happened. Then how the space came, then sky came, then air came, then fire, water and earth. Then from earth came amoebas and insects, and then like that, trees, plants, and then mammals, animals, and then ultimately came human. How the creation is very naturally and spontaneously happened. It has taken its time, but everything has happened as one after another. It's like a domino effect. It comes. If there is air, there has to be fire. Fire comes from air, and from fire comes water. From water comes earth. So this is like a chain. You can't help it. Now, this is simple science. Our scientists can pick it up. It's a formula given to us. So wherever they are looking for water in the cosmos, if they have fire, that means water is there. It's very simple science because of our knowledge which has been bestowed by us from our scriptures. Now, that is how the whole drama of creation comes. So, when you look at it, the human being, the creation of human, is the last thing which has happened on this creation. And what you notice is that what comes is dependent on everything which has come before it. So, like earth is dependent on all the other four elements. Earth cannot survive without water, air, fire. So, fire cannot survive without space. Fire cannot survive without air and space. Similarly, earth cannot survive. So if you look at like that, then plants don't need animals, but everything else to survive. But the creation does not need us to survive. So if tomorrow all the humans disappear, it's still going to be beautiful, because we are the last in the thread. So we need all of them. Imagine how much of gratitude the humans need to have by default, instinctively filled in us, so that we can appreciate this beautiful gift of life that has been bestowed on us. Because we are the lowest of the rung. But the beauty of this, what he has played a trick on us, is that in this last segment, he kept his spark. And that was to make the cycle complete. That even if we are dependent on the whole creation is dependent on us to merge back in him. Because this conscious, which is bestowed into human being as intellect, as discriminatory power, is only in the human birth. So even if human being as a physicality depends on the whole creation depends on us to merge back. This interdependence is the key. And that is what our master has been teaching us: unity in diversity, understand oneness. And unless and until we learn to play together, unless and until we learn to grow together, work together, we will not be able to achieve our goal. We cannot achieve the finale without the help of the creation. And the creation cannot find its culmination without our effort. So we as a body is the last plug, the last conduit which completes this cycle of creation. I hope this gives you enough food for thought to play with. Let me scan it once more if there is any questions or any thoughts. Sonam says life and living is, let me put it in this way. 1 minute. I will, sorry, what is this? Life and living is both sides of the same coin. But when we practically live in spiritual life, then it becomes a spiritual living. Yes, you can say that. You can say that, no problem. Life and, what is that? Okay, same. No more question. I don't see any question here. Is there anybody has any thought, anything you want to share? Everybody's, because our time is over. I like to start and end on time. So unless there is a special need, a special question or session, we can conclude. But I would appreciate if you all can give me your feedbacks. That would be lovely. And I can only request all of you to, because this video will again go back onto my channel in YouTube for others to watch it again and share it. So I will request all of you to please subscribe the channel so that the next sessions which we announce, you can be intimated accordingly. And I don't have to bombard you with all the different emails and everything. So I would finally request all of you to please share your comments, your suggestions, and any questions you may have. And if you wish to discuss any other topic with me, it'll be my pleasure. Whatever I can, I will be happy to do. We can organize another session. But in the meantime, please go on to our YouTube channel, which is Abhicall, and please subscribe it. So if there is no more questions, I would say thank you very much. I had a really lovely to see few faces at least. Shabnam, thanks for coming, but I would like you all to join more actively next time. Well, it is a pleasure to see you all. Thank you so much. God bless. Sayonara.